planned everything. Every single detail. America needs to see this.
In the highest offices, whispers can topple a nation. And in the shadows, conspiracies take root.
This is staged! They're destroying evidence!
Insurrection at the Capitol.
They orchestrated chaos, blamed patriots, and buried the truth in broad daylight.
But someone is always watching. Always.
The Capitol Plot, in theaters now.
Patriots, brace yourselves because the January 6th pipe bomb story just detonated again tonight. The internet is on fire with verified posts claiming Capitol Police officer Shawnee Kirkhoff as the potential bomber caught on the FBI's own surveillance footage. She walked away from the Capitol Police just 6 months after J6, then slipped quietly into a 3-letter intelligence agency. And right as that name began exploding across X, Blaze Media's Steve Baker, who was about to drop his long-awaited report, announced he was hitting pause after, quote, counsel from trusted parties and within and outside the government. And get this, at 9 a.m., November 6, hours before Steve Baker hit pause on his bombshell report, Nancy Pelosi suddenly announced she wouldn't seek re-election. Looks like she knew what was coming and jumped out ahead of the blast. Former Green Beret and intelligence insider Ivan Raiklin says none of this is a coincidence. He says two obscure laws, 2 U.S.C. 1967 and 1979, handed Pelosi's Capitol Police Board total control over the scene, the evidence, and the investigation itself. He's here tonight with maps, the statutes, and the receipts that could blow this case wide open. Ivan Raiklin, welcome back to the Next News Network. The first big question: why was Steve Baker's Blaze Media report suddenly paused? We've got it on screen right here. This was 23 hours ago that he posted that after abundance of caution, after an abundance of counsel from trusted parties within and outside government, we've hit pause on this revelation, which is now blowing up all over X. Why was it suddenly paused? What do you think was happening behind the scenes when he said he was asked to give the government more time to review the evidence?
I mean, I can only speculate based on reading the same tweet that you just referenced right there. My take would be is that most people are not as courageous and bold as I am in reporting about the truth, and they always have to run it by, especially if you're a bigger media outlet, you're going to run it by your legal counsel. So if they're going to make a bold, I guess, quasi-accusation, I make assessments. So it's pretty much where it's giving an analytic assessment about an event or an individual. So you can't really be sued for defamation. But if you're more of a coward, if you will, and I'm not accusing anybody of being a coward, but most people that don't want to really make a bold maneuver, they run it by their legal counsel, and then it becomes tamped down, and then it gets slow walked and slow rolled. Maybe another reason is because the White House, one of the last things that Steve Baker said, he was going to present it to Susie Wiles. Maybe they didn't like the calendar of the release because politically they were focused on some events down in Florida. They wanted that to outshine any sort of buzz on the internet. And again, this is all speculation, right? And so maybe next week on Tuesday or Wednesday would be a more palatable time to release that. But it puts Steve Baker, a former.
Well, I mean, news dies on Friday. I mean, if you want to drop something that you don't want anyone to pay attention to, you drop it on a Friday or maybe a Sunday night. We've seen that tactic time and time again.
But again, I mean, I don't know what goes on in Steve's mind. He is a former songwriter, a musician songwriter, so you may want to factor that into his analysis, or whether it's Julie Kelly, a former food blogger, as she puts out her content, you got to look at it from that perspective. One thing I will note that I just caught a glance of on Alex Jones is Kyle Seraphin was on, and I think he misinterpreted my tweet that I mentioned. He said that I was trying to take credit for the name of the individual that allegedly, this is an allegation by Steve Baker, not me. I just wrote the tweet that said, "Scalp. Hey, Nancy Pelosi, should I tell everyone the real reason you retired today?" Meaning my scalp is not the individual that was quote unquote allegedly identified by Steve Baker. It's more the scalp of Nancy Pelosi. And the reason why she is retiring at this point in time is if you go back to my investigations years ago in my Substack and all the advice that I provided to Barry Loudermilk's staff and team, it's like, I'm going to regurgitate on this show what I've already exposed to them for years now. That's why I become more and more frustrated. And you may think that my rhetoric is more of a being a jerk. It's because I've already expended thousands of hours, many years, watching videos, Steve Baker also, right? And no one's moving, right? So that's why my rhetoric has to escalate to maybe motivate them further and maybe mobilize the country to see that everyone's complicit in this at the highest levels, both Republicans and Democrats. But as it relates to the statute that we're going to talk about,
yeah, let's talk about that right now, because you've called to USC 1967 and 1979 the legal architecture for the Fedsurrection. Explain to our viewers how these statutes gave the Capitol Police Board, and therefore Pelosi and Schumer designates, control over the pipe bomb zones.
so if everybody listening in that hates me can calm down and take a breath and just take a look at these two statutes. Remember, this is a statute that applies, it's Title II U.S. Code Chapter 29, which it covers the authorities of the United States Capitol Police. Two particular sections talks about the powers and duties. You see there, subchapter 2. One is 1979.
We're looking at 1979 right now.
Particularly paragraph B, okay? And it says, authority of the board, meaning the Capitol Police Board, to determine conditions of release of security information. In the definition section, it talks about what is security information. That talks about anything physical security. Bottom line here, it's anything that the U.S. Capitol Police does and records, meaning the CCTV footage. So how did the Capitol Police weaponize the entire government to go after J6ers, whether or not they were guilty or not, is that they only released specific video footage over to the DOJ that they needed to support their narrative. And anything that was exculpatory, they would not provide that to the Department of Justice. So by the time it got to the Department of Justice for the further manipulation by Matt Graves and his team at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was already manipulated in-house by the General Counsel of the U.S. Capitol Police, by the Chief of Capitol, in coordination, collusion with them. And that's how you were able to get the weaponization component. That's why you never got any release of real substantive video until the Loudermilk Committee came into play, and there was a lot of internal friction to that. When you look at the details of the Capitol Police Board, that friction came from them. You notice that Tucker Carlson was fired the day before he was going to release his interview with Chief Stephen's son. 2 weeks prior to that, I had a long lunch meeting with Chief Stephen's son where I laid out what we're going to talk about a little bit today, which my theory of the case is that at this point and earlier on, I have a high level of confidence with almost certainty that Nancy Pelosi ran a deliberate, facilitated, incited, instigated breach of the Capitol through surrogates, including her family, daughter, son-in-law, her staff, Terry McCullough, Chief of Staff, Jamie Fleet, Aaron Black, and other affiliates to include for example, Ray Epps. The Ray Epps question is going to be explained to here when we go into the second statute, okay? But I want to close out with this first part. Not only was the CCTV footage used to manipulate these J6 cases, but also the U.S. Capitol Police officer's sworn testimony. So one of the officers that testified in the Oath Keepers trial was the head of dignitary protection for Nancy Pelosi, David Lazarus. What, you think he's going to testify that it was an Fedsurrection? Of course not. Do you think that others are going to, Harry Dunn, Acanilo Ganell, and others are going to testify to the Nancy Pelosi insurrection/Fedsurrection? No. They're going to create their political narrative in order to take out Donald Trump and all of his affiliates. So that's kind of covers Section 1979B.
So under this structure, what does it mean that the RNC and DNC sites fell within Capitol Police jurisdiction? Would the FBI or Metro Police even have had independent authority to investigate there?
Perfect question. So if you go back to Section 1967B, we should have started with that to give the overall geographical jurisdictional hook of this particular statute. This statute, particularly paragraph B, lists two areas that have specific jurisdiction where it's concurrently, B1, the area, and you can look at it here, is an area that has concurrent jurisdiction between U.S. Capitol Police and the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. As a side note, The U.S. Capitol Police operates under the authority of a Capitol Police Board, where there are 3 voting members, 1 House Sergeant at Arms appointed by Pelosi, 1 Senate Sergeant at Arms appointed by Mitch McConnell, and then later on January 20th of 2021, appointed by Chuck Schumer when he was the Senate Majority Leader. So when you can control those 2 sergeants at arms, you can literally direct all political weaponization as you deem fit. And you can set up an op. How do you set up an op? If you look at these 2 boxes, B1 refers to that box on the right, the north-south kind of a rectangular shape, and the one on the left is concurrent jurisdiction between U.S. Capitol Police and Department of Interior Park Police. Now, the weaponization for J6ers did not occur in that western box, the one on the left. So we focus in on the area that's in that bigger box. If you remember Clay Higgins, remember he said that there was those white buses by Union Station. Well, Union Station's right there listed at the top of that box. If you scroll all the way up, you see Union Station and the DC Metro. It's just an M, those boxes with an M in it. It's kind of hard to see. It's within the U.S. Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police Department concurrent jurisdiction zone, meaning they have all law enforcement capability on whether or not to arrest or criminalize anybody for it. So if they wanted to run an op and they wanted FBI involvement in the op, who's the lead? The U.S. Capitol Police, meaning Pelosi, the Capitol Police Board, and surrogates like Yogananda Pittman, Sean Gallagher, Dania Newell, Julie Farnham, and the list goes on, to include now what Steve Baker is now identifying through gate analysis as one small line of effort of the Fedsurrection play. Okay? I'm not going to take anything away from the great work that Steve Baker has been doing. Fantastic work. I want to, but keep in mind that it is only one small part of the big play. The Ray Epps component is one tactical component. The pipe bomb diversion is one tactical component. I'm trying to consolidate it all, right? And so as things like this come out, it only increases my level of confidence, which is already at high with almost certainty. I mean, at this point, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, it's beyond really any doubt to me at this point. The only way we get to the country to show that this is fully proven is we have to have courage with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in order, as well as, actually, you know what? Mike Johnson, John Thune, and Vice President Vance can do this today. J.D. Vance can say, you know what? Release all of the evidence, because in his role as President of the Senate, he technically controls the Senate Sergeant at Arms, who is currently the chair of the Capitol Police Board this year through January 3rd. He can go ahead and say, you know what? Release everything related to January 6th, specifically all communications and work product of the General Counsel of the U.S. Capitol Police, Tad Tobias, the guy that interprets those 2 laws to Nancy Pelosi's favor, right? And sends all the criminal referrals and all the CCTV footage and all the sworn testimony that was perjurious by these Capitol Police officers. When we get to see all of that, you will see how exactly the pipe bomb situation played out, how Ray Epps was essentially a surrogate player for Pelosi and company, and how John Sullivan and every single person then was weaponized against. And then you'll see how the cover-up took place after that with the J6 committee and so on and so forth. And I got to say, I played probably the singular most outsized role in everything related to Pelosi's reasoning on why she set up the Fedsurrection, because it was to stop my legal theory parliamentary maneuver in the joint session from being successful that would have guaranteed a re-election of Trump.
Now, I want to take a look at what we have here. This is Shawnee Kirkhoff. This is the name that's appearing everywhere online. Public records show she was a less lethal instructor with the Capitol Police. Testified, she later joined the FBI. Posts from Officer Liu say that she scrubbed her social media after leaving. What stands out to you about her role, and how does this fit within the jurisdictional framework?
Perfect. And I got to close with this. I got about a minute left before I got to bounce. I want to say this is that her role, if everything is true that I'm reading about her, she was head of training at the U.S. Capitol Police. So I would suspect, based on my background, and everyone else would agree, that if you're a training officer, you're probably training for scenarios such as placing pipe bombs, meaning you have dummy pipe bombs in your kind of equipment arsenal, if you will, to then rehearse to whether or not you can sniff them out with your dogs or identify them, right? So it wouldn't be a stretch for her having access to these fake pipe bombs and then go ahead and place them. I'm not saying that she placed them, but if you're in that position, you probably have access to fake pipe bombs, right? In addition to that, I've talked to many times Ken Capolino, the head of RNC security, on that day that took the picture that we all see. And he told me from day one that he thought it was a distraction, diversion, and it was not a legitimate pipe bomb.
Okay, so I need to ask you this. Where does Shawnee Kirkhoff fit within the Capitol Police command structure, that chain of command, and how does it connect back to Pelosi's office?
I'm going to leave that for Steve Baker. I think he's actually has a little bit more in-depth detail into that. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole, but I will say this. If he keeps delaying it, I'm going to go ahead and continue to showcase what I have.
Okay, so
I have a lot of stuff that he does not have, and I'm just trying to give him grace to provide what he has. So that I'm not preempting a lot of his great work.
Pelosi's resignation, I know you got to go, just hit after these details have surfaced, the Blaze report, pause, coincidence, timed exit. What's your take?
I think it was a timed exit because she thought that Steve Baker was going to release that. And because the Blaze, I mean, Glenn Beck has a big enough audience that enough people will realize the lemming right, if you will, the normies on the right, will start to see what the reality of January 6th was. So it's easy for her to kind of dip out. And then while they'll blame her for the Fedsurrection, well, she's retired. And so, the Republican cowards are just going to move on and do nothing about it.
So what happens next?
No accountability.
There won't be any accountability in this situation?
This
We won't see anyone?
too cowardly. Mike Johnson's too cowardly. Many people need to be replaced.
All right, Ivan, thank you for joining us and for your relentless work to uncover the truth.
Thank you.
All right, Patriots, we just ripped the mask off one of Washington's darkest secrets. 5 years after January 6th, 5 years of silence, redactions, lies. The truth is clawing its way out. A Capitol Police officer, Shawnee Kirkhoff, is now being openly named online as a potential pipe bomber. She quietly left the force just 6 months after January 6th, straight in the arms of the Federal Intelligence Agency. And here's the kicker. The entire bomb scene was inside Nancy Pelosi's legal jurisdiction. Think about that. The same statutes, 2 U.S.C. 1967 and 1979, written to protect Congress from attack, may have been weaponized to protect the attackers within. Evidence locked down, cameras sealed, no suspects named, $500,000 in reward money still dangling in the wind. And remember, Pelosi announced she wouldn't seek re-election just hours before Steve Baker hit pause in his Blaze Media bombshell. That's not timing, that is strategy. So if Ivan Raiklin's interpretation holds true, this is not incompetence, it's a cover-up baked right into the law. The Foxes wrote the rule book for guarding the henhouse. The FBI and the Capitol Police Board, they've had 5 long years to come clean. They've shown us nothing. America deserves the footage. America deserves the truth. And until they hand it over, we're not backing down.